Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Night Show. I'm your host, James Bell, and this evening I have the pleasure of bringing to you Hassan Youssef. I'm sure most of you have probably heard of this gentleman. After all, he is one of the world's most brilliant scientists and also internationally renowned for his deep dive technology, which revolutionized the field of virtual reality. How are you doing tonight, Hassan? Well, James, I'm doing great. Good night to you and to all the people at home. I'm truly glad to be here, and I can't thank you enough for the invitation. Not at all, the pleasure is all ours. Now, talking about something that may be surprising to some of the people in the audience. Is it true that you were once a Syrian refugee who had to flee from his country due to the civil war? Yes, it is. I understand why some people may be under the misconception that just because I am a successful man, I must have had a privileged upbringing. That couldn't be further from the truth. In the years before the Civil War, when my family and I still lived in Syria, our social situation wasn't bad. My parents had enough money to support my siblings and I, and to provide us with good living conditions. We used to go to a nice school, we were well fed, and happy overall. I never really felt that something was missing, until the war came, that is. It must have been a great shock. I can't imagine having my life turned upside down like that. You can bet it was. The terror was ever present and the future was full of uncertainty. Thankfully, we were able to leave the country before the situation had deteriorated that much. You left the country with your parents and siblings, right? Where were you going to? After careful consideration, my parents decided that Germany would be the best option for our family. It took us a while to get there, but nothing major happened during the journey. About your time living in Germany, what were the biggest problems you had to face? Were the cultural differences that big? The first months were definitely turbulent, mainly setting in and getting a legal situation sorted out. That is, being formally recognized as refugees and getting a permanent residency permit. Our first concern was finding a house that could fit all of us that wasn't too expensive. Then, my parents started to think about education. They feared my siblings and I wouldn't have access to quality education, that our future prospects would be hindered. Luckily, our house was close to a very good public school, so this box was quickly checked. Furthermore, my parents had some trouble getting their university degrees recognized in different countries and finding well-paying jobs. The situation was aggravated by the language barrier. My parents could speak English well enough, but they knew next to none German, facts that discouraged most employers to hire them. Surprisingly, their ability to speak Arabic was what saved them. They were hired by a company that mostly dealt with Arabic-speaking countries and was in desperate need of interpreters. In my case, I had some trouble at first communicating with my classmates with my broken English, but I eventually learned how to speak German. Now, about cultural differences. Syria is a collectivist society whereby loyalty is extremely valued. People tend to structure their lives around those important to them. Schedules are closely followed, more time is devoted to personal interaction, and freedom is highly regarded. It was strange at first getting used to a much more individualistic German society, one that doesn't strictly adhere to social hierarchies. For example, it is impolite to disagree with another in Syria. However, in Germany, this type of behavior is encouraged. I see. Things definitely weren't easy for you and your family. I think this serves to show that your success isn't just a product of a privileged start, but the result of a life of hard work. On another topic, tell me some about your experience with xenophobia, a rapidly growing concern of the modern world that seems to be in everyone's mind nowadays. You're right about that. With the increasing number of refugees every day, the product of several disasters around the globe, be they natural or caused by anthropomorphic action, tensions have been skyrocketing between natives and the immigrants, especially in European countries, where most of these refugees look for asylum. My experience with prejudice and xenophobia was relatively harmless. I was never physically assaulted, and the verbal abuse never got to the point where it impacted my daily life. Even so, it certainly wasn't pleasant. I was the target of some racist jokes and got called names in a few situations. The most vocal about the prejudice never shied away from telling me how much harm I was doing to their country and why I should go back to mine. It all would have been much worse if I hadn't made friends with people who were sympathetic of my reality and who accepted me into their mix. I cherish these friendships to this day. I'm glad to hear that. This conversation has certainly been enlightening. Thank you, Hassan, for sharing a piece of your story with us. I would dare to say I can understand a little more what refugees have to go through now. It was a pleasure, James. I hope to bring with this more support to people who have been forced to abandon their countries, inspire them to keep on fighting. You certainly will. That's all for tonight, folks. See you tomorrow with another edition of The Night Show.